always such a pleasure to be joining you right here on ET Now. This is the India Development Debate. I'm Supriya Shrinate, and straight on to the big story. Bombay House is fast-tracking its plans for a deal with Jet Airways. Tata Sons chairman N Chandrasekaran today apprised the board and the company of the pros and cons of buying out Jet Airways, which is struggling to stay afloat. Sources tell your channel that the presentation was broadly on the philosophy behind the proposal and didn't delve too much into deal mechanics. It is emerging that the Tatas are not averse to Jet Airways promoter Naresh Goyal holding a token stake and even a board position post this buyout. According to a report in the Economic Times, our sister newspaper, the Tatas could fly out of AirAsia joint venture should the Jet deal materialize and focus solely on a full-service carrier. Soon after the board meeting, Tata Sons said discussions with Jet have been preliminary and no formal offer has been made just yet. The biggest consolidation in the Indian skies is a big topic of discussion and debate right here on the India Development Debate this evening. And joining us on the show, Jitendra Mahargab, former ED Air India, Kapil Kaul, CEO and Director, Kappa South Asia, Mark D. Martin, founder and CEO, Martin Consulting, and of course, Mohit Saraf, M&A partner at Luthra & Luthra. So thank you, each one of you, for being with us. And may I first begin with you, Kapil Kaul. After its board meeting today, the Tata Group statement said it's only preliminary talks, no proposal. But the reality is that this is the first official communication, first official admission by the Tatas that they're looking for a deal with Jet, and that should be significant.
Well, I don't think there is anything surprising in what the chairman have said, that there is an interest, and the interest is preliminary, because till they reach some structure with respect to the deal and the offer that they're trying to make, I think it will always be preliminary till there is a concrete next steps can be taken by Tata Sons. This is a complex deal, to be frank with you. The industry is complex, external environment is complex, and Jet, to be frank with you, currently, even though I believe that it has an excellent brand, it has possibly the best soft assets in terms of people, it's a great franchise, external management capabilities, but it's in a very complex and critical situation right now, as is the industry. So from Tata's perspective, jumping into the deal, irrespective of the strategic rationale that it may have, merits time and little more detailing to do. So from my perspective, the comments from the Tata chairman are appropriate. I don't think he could have said anything more than that right now. I would like to reiterate that in spite of the fact that there is a strategic rationale, the structuring of the deal and the complexities involved in it necessarily requires it to get deeper into it and understand what you're getting into it. Is it investable? What is the cost of turnaround? What are the how is the external environment going to behave in the next 2-3 years? There's so many issues, and more important, does the consolidation actually help them to generate a profitable entity when they combine it? So there are many issues to deal with it. But yes,
Kapil, give me a minute now.
They're formally accepted that there are
Kapil, give me a minute. Let me just come in there. Okay, Kapil, give me a minute there. Let me come in there. And Mohit Saraf, you the deal maker in many ways, more than one on this show. No proposal yet. They're only preliminary talks is the statement. I agree with Kapil that, nothing surprising that they've said so, but this is going to be a fairly complex deal that will perhaps be inked. But why is this deal lacking pace? Is this merely a tough bargaining, negotiating tool? Now, given the Jet share price reaction that one saw, from the Tata's group point of view and with their best interest, is it only fair that the deal happens over a period of time so that the irrational exuberance one is seeing right now kind of wanes off?
Actually, if you look at any M&A deal, whether involving listed or unlisted company, it takes months. And people have to understand synergy benefits, understand rationalization process, understand the contingent liability. There is a huge amount of debt in the company. So I would say it will take some time. And I think, and also there is a listed company involved and open offer get triggered. So I would say even a statement like that, which came from the chairman of Tata Sons, I would say was very aggressive, that it came out when the deal has not even started being cooked. They have said that they are looking at the deal, and that's a positive statement. And again, I won't be surprised that they will get into deeper due diligence, understand the entire synergy benefit, contingent liability, the debt portion. There's a huge amount of debt and all those issues, whether this makes sense or not. And again, it's a great brand, but again, there are a lot of, I would say, there are a lot of challenges in details, and deals take months, even in listed companies. So I would not say that it's going slow, it's going pretty fast. And it shows that there is a commercial intent to look at the deal.
No, fair point indeed. Martin, if I may come to you, but you know, as far as this marriage is concerned, there seem to be way too many characters in there. You know, there's of course Naresh Goyal, there is Tata Sons, there is Singapore Airlines, there's Etihad, maybe Delta. I mean, with so many players in there, can they all play party pooper? Can too many cooks spoil this broth?
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me today. No, interestingly, as you mentioned, I mean, we're looking at an M&A in 2018, and this is probably the biggest M&A that we'd have. And, you know, I think the writing is on the wall for Tata to come on record to say that they're actually in talks itself is a big deal. And I think if you look at it historically, whenever Tata goes after an acquisition, by habit, they tend to speed track that transaction. We've seen it with Tetley, VSNL, we've seen it with JLR, Chorus. So, I mean, you know, admittal is one thing, and then transitioning over to a full-blown acquisition, I believe, if this is true, then we're looking at a fast-track deal. Now, coming up on SIA, eventually, at any circumstance, SIA will only hold about 49% because FDI from a foreign airline allows you 49%, where the Indian partner has to have 51. So, from both perspectives, the way we see it and how we've looked at this on a whiteboard is that we're looking at an acquisition that might be taking place with the Tatas leading the transaction, whilst an SPV entry might come from SIA. Now, again, this is something which is plausible, but interestingly, I see this very strategic for the whole Tata Sons and Tata Group, because ideally, you know, whilst we've seen what they came out with on AirAsia, in effect, you're buying a Jet Airways, and you're also buying a Sahara, which is now Jet Light. So an effective fleet with Vistara, a growing Vistara, should make this a fairly formidable airline kitty, at least from the Tata perspective. And coming up on how soon can we see this, I mean, I don't know. As you know, our guess is anywhere between, you know, the next 10 days up to about you know, to 90 to 180 days. But yes, this definitely is. It's a mover. It's a mover.
Knows how Indian aviation works inside out. You've been there. You've had your hands dirty as far as running an airline and, you know, operations is concerned. With an eye on Jet Airways, could Tata actually be biting more than it can eventually chew? I mean, that is one concern that a lot of market men have. Mr. Bhargav?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You know, the fact is, we must look at the brief statement that Chairman Tata Sons issued, much more into it. I've seen umpteen cases of mergers and acquisitions where they've been in a state of denial or said no comment. So it's a very positive beginning towards this thing. The reality is, you can't say the Tatas are trying to chew more than what they can bite. They have been keen on getting into the aviation sector. It gets an opportunity, though it's coming very late to them, but they get into a quantum leap by this small modest entry, because Jet Airways offers to them on a platter a fairly large market size, international network, domestic, fairly large domestic size of the market, etc. So why would Tatas not get into it? That's one point. Second is, the statement today is a very clear thing that A, they are interested. It's a very affirmative action on Tata's part. Action will be taken, and they can certainly not go and say and spill the whole thing and say this is where we have progressed. So the word used is very preliminary talks have taken place. It must have been much more, of course, because why would they look at not all the pros and cons of the acquisition and then take a decision? The very fact that the chairman felt it right to brief the board is a clear indication they're on a positive track, and it will be a very sound kind of thing for Tatas to progress. And of course, I'm not as kind of an optimistic as Martin is that you can expect the merger to take place in 10 days' time, though Naresh Goyal may like to look at considering his desperate financial situation. But Tatas will tread cautiously on it. They have a lot to lose if they cannot get the right kind of fit. As Kapil said, the strategic fit has to be proper. The way forward is to be looked at it. And of course, they got to manage, as you very rightly questioned, the multiple players in the game. They all have to be taken care of. And of course, Naresh Goyal will deal with the Etihad. Tatas will have to deal with Singapore Airlines, Asia, and of course, what to do with Vistara, etc. One, of course, as it's being speculated, merging Vistara into Jet Airways. Question is, Vistara has been created as a good brand. What are they going to do with it? All these kind of things will have to be looked at, and they will do it. Tatas have the requisite management competence to look at it and arrive at a decision.
Fair point. Okay, Kapil, I'll come to you and talk to you about some specific issues. You know, my own sense is that Tatas are looking at this. Of course, one of the reasons why they're looking at this purely is from increasing market share point of view. And if you actually look at AirAsia, is also a part of the stable, and that's a separate discussion whether they will fly off AirAsia or not, which we'll do in just a bit. But if you look at AirAsia as a part of the stable, if this deal were to go through, they will have a market share of nearly 23%. If this were to happen, does pricing power come back to operators then? Does pricing power come back to Tata Group?
Well, first of all, pricing power in domestic is not possible. It's not feasible. Even after this acquisition, it's not feasible to have a pricing power because the industry structure is on one side and rest of the is possibly on Indigo's side and rest of the industry to some extent is on the other side. So if the acquisition would mean that the consolidated entity would get a pricing power, I don't agree. I don't see that feasible. One has to be also cognizant of the fact the kind of capacities that Indigo, Spice and Go is bringing. And that's once in a generation kind of an expansion. Indigo could possibly be in 2 years looking at a fleet of 340, 350 aircraft. Spice has a massive aggressive plan. So I think if the rationale of the deal is to bring a pricing power in the domestic market, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's going to happen. The question is that there are 3 full-service airlines, and we don't, from long, we believe that there is no market for 3 full-service airlines. Even when Kingfisher was there, our view was that the market is not big enough to hold 3 full-service having the same model. So rationalization was inevitable. What form and shape it takes, whether it happens or not, one doesn't really know. But if your question is that will it bring a pricing power, I don't agree. Pricing power is a determinant which is on the other side. That's not with the entity, even if they consolidate. So that's why I would say. But it's extremely important, primarily, to know that there's a lot of speculation and around what they're going to do on operational issues, whether they will take the assets. Or my thing is too early to comment on that. The fact is that there are 2 clear points. Tatas want to be in this business and become extremely relevant. Otherwise,
Kapil,
I don't know what sense does it make to them. And this acquisition, earlier it was an Air India acquisition.
Kapil, I'll have to cut you short there.
Yeah.
Kapil, okay. Kapil, I'll have to cut you short there. I'll come back to you. You know, coming to you, Mohit, and the question really is that given the intense competition this deal will create, forget about the industry, within the Tata Group itself, 3 competing airlines vying for attention and capital. It's obvious that Tata Group would want to get rid of AirAsia. Is flying out of that its best bet? Otherwise, this could lead to cannibalization. AirAsia is an extremely aggressive player, has just announced a new promotional offer of $399 for domestic fares, $19.99 for international. I mean, would all of this end up cannibalizing if it doesn't get out of AirAsia? Mohit.
I don't know whether they would like to get out or not, but I would clearly see that the Jet and Vistara are a full-frill airline, and consolidation of the 2 will make sense. And obviously, it will also make a lot of sense from the, I would say, they'll suddenly be 25% market share. And therefore, they will be able to rationalize a lot of cost, improve operations and things like that. So it will make a lot of sense to get to 25% of the market. And AirAsia is really a low-cost airline, and I don't know whether Tatas would like to be there or want to reduce their position. But again, these are issues which is of management to look at it and understand. But typically, I have not seen too many airlines, both in full frill and low cost. So maybe they have to look at these rationalization, or they can run, because I think India is going to be a big growth market. and they might just focus on full frill and low cost competing with Indigo and SpiceJet. So again, these are issues of business. They have to make sense. But I think what is important is, if you look at all projections, the market is going to grow significantly, and therefore being a larger player makes a lot of sense. Together they will be 27%. Internationally they'll be the second largest. So it will make a lot of synergy benefits, pricing power, and also I would say options, and they can maybe rationalize cost, debt. All those issues will make tremendous sense for any M&A activity, and well, you basically control 1/4 of the market, so it's a big sense, and I think it'll be interesting. But again, there's a lot of detail, and I think any of these M&A deals, and particularly if a listed company is involved, whether you will merge into a listed company or you will acquire a listed company, make an open offer, there'll be change of management control. There are a lot of issues involved. So therefore, expecting a miracle to happen overnight.
Mohit, give me a minute. I don't think there's a miracle that's going to happen overnight, but yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Mr. Bhargav, the Tata Group has not yet proved itself for running an efficient operator of airlines. I mean, you know, yes, it ran an Air India, but those things were very different. There was no other operator then. Today, it's a very hyper-competitive market. It's a market that's dominated by non-Tata players. Is a deep pocket all that Tata brings to the table? Mr. Bhargav?
The deep pocket, the other aspect is, let's not look at it. J.R.D. Tata himself admitted in 1991, and I'm quoting Ratan Tata at the Vistara launch party in Mumbai, where he said after J.R.D. came out of Narasimha Rao's office, and when he spoke about the opening of skies, etc., he said the times were different when we were running Air India. We'll have to get an international partner to give India a great airline. So it was the philosophy of J.R.D. Tata also in 1991, and that's many years ago, and the market has changed. But let's not forget, Vistara is a very high quality brand. The product quality is exceptionally good. One is very often reminded of the Air India of yesteryears. So with Singapore Airlines backing them and part of the whole consortium, you will see that they will be able to produce an excellent world-class airline. Jet Airways is in deep financial trouble. So once the financial worries are taken care of, you get on to a quality product. Let's not forget, Jet Airways 10 years ago was also rated as an exceptionally good product. So what are we looking for? A good management, good people with experience of the airline industry, which is provided by Singapore Airlines. So you have all the positives going. So it is not that Tatas do not have experience, etc. What they need is how to guide and how to have a vision to run an efficient airline, and they have it.
Fair point. But let me go across to Mark Martin. And Mark, the promise of geographical expansion that a jet brings to the table is perhaps going to be too difficult to look away or deny, because both Vistara and AirAsia, if you actually look at their geographical reach, largely cater to East Asia. It's jet that opens the, you know, in many ways the flyways, and with Etihad, of course, to the Western world.
All right, you know, absolutely. If you look at it historically, I mean, you know, let's look at SIA per se. They've also looked at Southeast Asia, but the West has been a long-term obsession, and they obviously had strategic partners through Star Alliance and Lufthansa. Now, the interesting part about what the value that Jet gives them is their existing bilaterals, code shares, they fly through the Middle East and onward over to Europe and the US. It's almost like creating another Singapore Airlines, but nestled out of India and nestled in this core Middle East hotbed, you know. And when I say Middle East hotbed, I'm talking about Middle East Airlines hotbed, because India is a workers' market for the Middle East. So that, you know, to get into that opportunity itself is great revenue from a long-term perspective. And that's one thing we see this evolve into. I think that, you know, we're looking at creation of a, you know, we don't know what that end creation is, but if it does happen, we're looking at an airline evolve that's going to pretty much take on board and take on the Middle Eastern airlines to start with, get over to Europe and start flying onward to the US and, you know, possibly Latin America, and, you know, completely bring back the hub model which India lacks. And just a minute before I kind of close, the other part that I want to very quickly mention here is that the effective SIA brand itself is very synonymous in the region, and that brings up a lot of strategic uniqueness with what Jet Airways has and established in the past. So we are looking at I mean, if this does happen, it is going to be almost like a new avatar of an Air India back in the 60s and 70s, but possibly on the lines of a Lufthansa.
Interesting
with a global
perspective
network.
there, but just hold that thought, because I really want to broad base this debate in more ways than one. And you know, Kapil, the price conscious Indian airline space has been a graveyard for many promoters out there. Do you believe this kind of a consolidation that one is seeing, and this is not happening because it makes ample business sense for two entities, it's happening at this point in time and now because Jet is going to go under if there is no rescue line, and which is why Tata also finds it an interesting and perhaps a plausible buy. Does a situation like this warrant policy intervention? Not for this deal, and you know, I disagree with reports out there which say that Airport Authority of India can, you know, waive off its dues and public sector banks are going to take haircuts. It's going to lead to a lot of criticism. I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm really talking from a larger policy intervention and aviation point of view. Kapil.
First of all, Supriya, I think to think that Jet is going to go under is possibly the flavor of the week or a day, and these discussions that it will go belly up. But I believe the promoter is extremely resilient. He has a good brand. It's a better buy than Air India. He still has some levers to manage even if this deal doesn't go through. Though obviously there is a concern, that the concern gets reflected every time you hear that vendors or lessors are looking at payment. So I don't completely agree that it's absolutely a dead end, number one. Second, as for the second question is concerned, my view would be that the Jet Airways primarily and the integration that you are looking at Jet, there are many contours to it. There will be many sort of layers to it before it happens. But I don't think from a Tata's perspective that they have to be getting into the deal. It must make sense, because even if the market is large, but it must make a financial sense. Investment must make a financial sense. The turnaround should be feasible. So they have to look at it whether the deal makes it fit, even though the rationale that India is going to be the biggest market is there, but ultimately it comes at a cost, and that has to be looked at from their side. From Jet's perspective, I, at this point of time, believe that we cannot rule out the fact that Mr. Goyal has reached a dead end. It's very complex and challenging for him. But I don't, at this point, believe that if the deal with Tatas doesn't have to go, that Jet will go as sort of it will fold up. Though, to be honest with you, I must confess that as you see, the complexities are very large. Third thing, there is to be an issue of government intervention. Now, government intervention is not a bad thing. If government intervenes for Air India, I see no reason why government shouldn't intervene for any private sector. I don't know why we think that Air India contributes more to our economy.
No, I don't think the present political narrative is going to allow the government to intervene.
I never believe
No, Kapil. Right. No, Kapil, theoretically what you may say is right, and in principle what you may say is right. But I think, you know, from the present narrative point of view, to expect the government to intervene on the price of a private carrier, I don't think that's happening, and let's be realistic about this. But Mohit Saraf, is this also going to be a test case for consolidation in Indian aviation? We've seen the big ones not take off. Kingfisher Airlines, Air Deccan, Jet Sahara, Indian Airlines, Air India. This is yet another consolidation. And is this going to be the test case? Can a consolidation succeed here?
I think it can succeed. If you look at all past consolidation, really, the market was very different. The growth of the sector was nothing compared to what we are hearing the reports. And also the oil was on the different side. I think all moved up from $50 to $150. And now all reports suggest that oil is not going to be that expensive. It may not fall tremendously. So I would say it's an interesting thing. If you look at the passenger growth traffic, which is very significant in last 2-3 years, and I would say really India is at a cusp of a growth stage. So next 10-12 years are going to be a crazy for growth, and therefore for a very strong growth cycle for air traffic passengers, and that's very important. And I would say that's the reason why if India is looking at such a growth cycle, then there is a fit case for intervention. Right. I'm not saying that the government need to intervene at this stage, But I would say it's a very important stage
Okay.
that you cannot at this stage basically
Okay,
liquidate
Mohit sir-
an airline
okay.
which consolidate, which runs almost 15% of the passenger traffic.
Okay, I'm completely out of time here. I wish I would have got more comments on board. Mark Martin, Jiten Bhargav, Kapil Kaul and Mohit Saraf, thank you very much for speaking to us.